Good morning. Had to use my high school principal voice. So it's good to be with you this morning. You're kind of a special class to me. You were the first class I read Dr. Seuss to when you were in kindergarten. Not all of you, because they had me go over to Royal View and read Dr. Seuss, and there probably isn't a person in the room that even remembers that, but it was kind of fun doing that. And you remember that? Secondly, you were the first class to take up the Mayor's Challenge. We were doing this every year, and you were the first class to do that, and I believe your project was to make Willowick bully-free. How many of you remember that? I hope. How many of you remember where your tree is planted at Manry? Excellent. So it's still there, getting bigger every year. So we appreciate that. Willowick is known for its hospitality. It's also known for having great kids, and we're excited to be able to celebrate and honor our Korean War vets with you. We started doing this last year with the World War II vets, and since that time, 2 of them have passed away. 2 of them that were here had passed away. So any opportunity we get to honor our veterans, I think it's a great thing. How many of you have ever watched the program The Price is Right? Ever watch that? How many of you would pay $300 for a 60-inch flat screen HD TV? $300 for a 60-inch TV, raise your hand. All right, $200. $200 for a 60-inch TV. How many of you would pay $50 for backstage passes for you and all your friends at a Beyonce concert? Raise your hand. Justin Bieber? How many would pay $25 for a new iPhone? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you would pay with your arms or your legs or your life for the freedom of your country? Tough question, though. You know, you raise your hand, but would you really? The men that we honor today made that decision to serve their country. And the value of our lives is not in wealth or power, as you know, even though our society will teach you otherwise. The true value in our lives is in serving others. That's where you'll find happiness. That's where you find a sense of worth. Serving others also means sacrifice. These men and women who served in Korea are truly service men and women because they served and they sacrificed. Came across a quotation from somebody much wiser than me, and it says this: in war, there are no unwounded soldiers. Now think about that for a minute. I'm going to say it again. In war, there are no unwounded soldiers. I'm sure that these veterans here today would agree. Today, the people of Willowick, on behalf of their mayor and our 8th graders, honor and thank you for your service to our country in the Korean effort and enabling us to enjoy the freedoms that we always often take for granted. So we thank you. Last week, about a week and a half ago, when we started getting back all the information to make the proclamations that these men will be awarded today, one man sent his forms back, and when my administrative assistant, Mrs. Wolvish, called the family to tell them what time to be here, they said that he is in hospice. And so I was going to go down the hospice to give him his resolution, but he passed away. So I'd ask for a moment of silence for George Verity. Thank you. Also joining us today is Adjutant Pat Bubonics from the American Legion, and Sue Wolvish, my administrative assistant. She's the mayor's babysitter. And Ann Turk, who is the councilwoman for this ward in Ward 2, or at least Ward 2 splits Willowick Middle in 2. So we're happy to have them. Today what we're going to do is give resolutions to each of these men. We're going to ask them to speak for about 60 seconds. We don't have a lot of time because you have to get ready for final exams. And so we will ask them to speak, and then you have questions. I guess most of the questions are from the tables here. And we are looking forward to that. The resolutions that they have, they're actually proclamations. I'm not going to read them all. I'm only going to do one because they're all different, but I just want to point out what a proclamation is. It looks like this, actually. It's pretty cool. And this one, they're in alphabetical order. It's Office of the Mayor Proclamation. Whereas Charles E. Albert, Jr., being recognized with gratitude and appreciation as a military veteran for his service to our country during the Korean War, and whereas Mr. Albert served in the military from September 1952 through July 1985, serving with the United States Marine Corps for 1 year and the United States Navy for 32 years, both active and reserved, achieving the rank of captain, and having served in the many capacities, including on 2 destroyers at sea during the Korean War, in an anti-sub warfare escorting aircraft carriers. Whereas Mr. Albert earned his BSME from the University of Missouri in 1955, has lived in Willowick since July of 1959 with his wife Mildred and their daughter. He worked as a senior engineer in project and system development at Bailey Controls for 40 years and a recipient of 2 design patterns in which they still employ. I, Richard J. Bondi, do hereby declare June 2nd, 2014 to be Charles E. Albert Day. The Willowick community extends to Mr. Albert its thanks for the many years of services he has given to his family, his community, and his country. In testimony whereof I have hereunto subscribed my name and caused the great seal of the city of Willowick to be affixed the 2nd day of June, 2014. Richard John Bondi, Mayor. I won't read them all because we really aren't going to have that time. I did notice 7 of you had children that I taught when I taught here at when it was Willowick Junior High, which is really pretty cool. Your kids got old and I didn't. Richard Avenmarg. Thank you. Thank you. Michael Carroll. Mr. Carroll. Thank you. Chet Kutzel. Over here. Chet. This is Richard Yeager. I don't believe he's here. Is he here? Not here? Okay. Ed Kalich. Kenneth Kleinhans. Thank you. Richard Cleaver. There you go. Richard Schaefer. There we go. Anthony Taddeo. Edward Van Bergen. Is that it? You want to help me with these ones? Each of you get a book that says Korean Reborn. It's written by the Koreans thanking you for your service. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask each of them to kind of talk for, and I realize it's only 60 seconds, a minute, but tell us something about your service and what you did during the war. Not everybody who serves the United States serves in active combat. So understand that, but everybody has an important role. Mr. Mark?
Good morning. Graduated in 1950. War broke out, and I was drafted. I went to Fort Lee, Virginia for my 16 weeks of training. Halfway through the training, I was told to go see a major, and it kind of shook me up. Like, I've been in there 8 weeks. I don't know any majors. So the sergeant told me where to go. When I went to his office and reported, he was going through a bunch of paperwork and asked me, he said, I see you did drafting work in your civilian life. He said, how would you like to do drafting work for me? So I was one of the fortunate ones. I stayed in the States. From our company, most of them went to Korea. There was a few that went to Germany, and about 17 of us stayed in the States. But I'm real thankful that I didn't have to go over there, and I really feel sorry for the fellows that do. Thank you.
And Mr. Avermark's official day, which will be for all posterity because it's in the books at City Hall, will be June 3rd. So on the electronic sign, you'll see, after it says, welcome to the City of Willowick, you'll see Richard Avermark Day, Korean War vet. So,
I'm Charlie Albert. I also graduated in 1950 from high school, and avoided being drafted as much as I could. I went to junior college, had a deferment at that time. They gave us a bunch of tests, and those of us did well on the test. They gave us a college deferment. After I graduated from college in 2 years, they didn't draft me. I didn't tell them I'd graduated. I went up to the University of Missouri and talked to Marines that were running the ROTC unit into becoming a contract NROTC unit student. At that time, they found out that I could blow the bugle. So those of you guys in here who can blow a bugle, they love you. And I tell you, that got me some pretty good duty. After 3 years in ROTC, I graduated from the University of Missouri with a degree in mechanical engineering and was assigned to a destroyer. It was the oldest destroyer in the fleet. Hull number was 466. It had been taken back in commission during when the Korean War started, and completely done over. We had all aluminum superstructure on it. We had all the latest in electronics. Most of those were vacuum tube electronics, which probably many of you don't know anything about. But it took us two 10,000 kilowatt generators when we lighted all the equipment off in order to keep this stuff going. That's how difficult it was. Anyway, I found the ship on the island of Malta in the Mediterranean. I went through Casablanca and French Morocco during the Revolution, avoiding as much as I could being shot at. And then we got up. We spent a lot of time in that summer in the Mediterranean, fending off the Russians. The Soviets at that time, the Cold War really started to heat up. In 1957, we went back, and actually we launched airstrikes against the Palestinians that were coming down out of Syria, attacking our friends in Jordan. And so that basically my career as far as active duty went. And anytime I was very fortunate. I was not a hero. I got a bunch of we call these Gedunk ribbons. These are ribbons that you go over and get those over at the exchange. These ribbons are for being there. That's essentially what it amounted to. For the rest of these guys here, these are heroes. And these are people I'm glad. I just feel so good to be here with them. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Ken Kleinhans, your day is June 6th, as it says on your resolution.
I was in Korea, and I was a switchboard operator that we had 3 people every other day. And the thing that happened, The officer came to me the next day and said to me, "Where were you?" I was sleeping. And the thing that happened, if that happened been the war, I wouldn't be sitting here at all.
And your day is June. It's on here someplace. June 7th.
June 7th? All right, my name is Ed Kalich. I joined the Air Force in 1952. I graduated from high school at the time. It was a half year. And I went to tech school, went to Space Tech School in Amarillo, Texas. I was a sheet metal man in the Air Force. I was actually what you call a body and fender man. Somebody kicked battle damage or your car gets wrecked, and I was the guy that fixed the airplane, okay? One of the things I got a big kick out of is I look at all this crowd and I look at these young guys. Guys, I wasn't much older than you. They put me behind a 51 Mustang to warm it up in the morning. Now, it's big 12-cylinder engines, and I asked the line chief, I says, "Champ," he was an old guy, 26 years old. I said, "You ever think about taking one of these off?" He says, "Every time." I said, "That's what I got the urge for." He says, "No problem taking off. Coming down is what the problem is." He said, "And if you made it, you wish you didn't." That's what I got to say. Thank you.
Ed Van Bergen's day is June 14th.
Thank you. My name is Ed Van Bergen. I was drafted in the Army in September of 1951. I was 21 years old. I really didn't want to go in the Army. I wore glasses at the time, and I brought a note from my eye doctor stating what my eyes were, and I showed it to the sergeant at the induction center. He said, "Don't worry, they'll put you right up front." So sure enough, I went into the infantry, had my basic training at Fort Riley, Kansas, went over to Korea on a boat. It took about 2 weeks on the Pacific Ocean to get there. I was seasick all the way over. Well, we landed at a place called Incheon, and they sent me up to the front lines. We lived in what we call bunkers, like caves built in the side of a hill, and made bunks out of tree limbs and telephone wire that we could pick up. And it was pretty nice in Korea because when I was there, the war was sort of winding down, and the only thing we had to worry about was artillery fire coming over, and if they caught you out in the open, they might shoot at you from a long range. So that was my time in Korea. Then they sent me over to Japan to finish out my 2-year enlistment, and I was stationed at Mount Fuji, Japan, and that was nice there, just like in a park. And then after 2 years, I mustered out in September of 1953. So I had a good time in the Army, made a lot of friends, and I wouldn't trade that for all the world, all the good times I had in the Army.
Were any of you teenagers when you went in the service? Any of you like 18, 19 years old when you went in the service? No? Were any of you 18 or 19 years old when you went in the service? You were? Okay. So when you think about it, you guys are going to be 15. They were only 3 years older than you. 3 or 4 years older than you. So, Anthony Taddeo, yours is June 13th.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm so glad to be part of this auspicious occasion. And I'd like to give my heartfelt thanks to Mayor Bondi for having the foresight to feel that there's people in his community that were overlooked, that weren't given any recognition that they should have deserved. And I give him my heartfelt thanks for that. And also to all of you for being here today. I thank you. I feel honored. I was 19 when I got drafted into the service. I was only out of school 1 year. And it was all a big thing to me. I was very frightened of what could happen and very unexpected that it did almost. So basically, I was very fortunate. I came through unscathed. As you can see, I'm 85 now, and I feel pretty good. And actually, I was an airborne. We were paratroopers, but the president decided he didn't want us to jump in Korea. So he made us combat medics. And that was my occupation there. I was a combat medic. I was an infantryman without a rifle, helping people to their needs. And it was quite an experience. I spent from November 1950 to December of 51 there, which was the early part of the war. And I hate to say this, but this country was very unprepared in every way. The politicians were running it and not the military. So unfortunately, we were at their mercy. So it all worked out, fortunately, but it's the only war I think we've ever fought that they've never signed an armistice. They signed a ceasefire. They had a repatriation of prisoners, but they have never signed an armistice to my knowledge. Now, I stand to be corrected by that if anybody knows different, but as far as I know, that's a fact. Well, thank you again, and I'm very appreciative to each and every one of you. Thank you.
Mr. Carroll's Day is June 4th.
Yeah, I was in the Korean. I was in there in May of 51. I stayed there till November of 53. And I was a mechanic, and basically we just took care of everything, take care of the truck. We had a gas, they pumped boats would come into the Incheon, and they would take the boats, they would take in and run the water line, the gas pipe, and run it up to Seoul, where the airplanes would get all their gas that they could do their job. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dick Schaefer. I was drafted, between my sophomore and junior year at Miami University. And I went in the Army. I couldn't boil water, so I figured they'd make me a cook, which they didn't. I was sent to an Air Force school where I learned how to fix helicopters. And many of you can't see this, but these were the little helicopters that were used in Korea. It's like Korea was the first war where helicopters really played a major role. And these little guys were all over the place. Probably you've never heard or seen the movie MASH or heard about MASH. MASH was Scoble's Army Surgical Hospital. These were used quite effectively in those days. I never got overseas. I was a mechanic on these little helicopters, but I was shot at. One day we were flying over Mississippi, and forest all over the place. There was a little smoke coming up out of the woods, and we went over to, thought maybe there was a forest fire. We went over, flew over there, and it was still. There were two guys down there with shotguns, and they shot at us. Now, we didn't have afterburners on these little helicopters, but if we had one, we would have used it because we got out of there real fast. We were not hit. So after we moved the Army Aviation School from Fort Sill down Oklahoma, down to Camp Rucker, Alabama, then I went to factory school in Philadelphia, learned how to fix these big Army H-21 helicopters. They called them the Flying Banana. They were large and very complex helicopters. And so we ran a school in Fort Riley, Kansas, to teach engineering and maintenance officers the systems on these aircraft while they were taught to fly them. And I wound up teaching systems on these helicopters. Had a great time. Enjoyed it. That's it.
Good morning. I also would like to thank Mayor Bondi and each one of you for recognizing us from the Korean War. That war has come down through history as the Forgotten War. I believe it got that name because it was less than 5 years after the end of World War II that the North Koreans invaded South Korea and started the Korean War. I didn't want to get drafted. My number was coming up, so I joined the Air Force. I spent my time at an air base 20 miles behind the front lines, close enough to hear the artillery night and day. Our job was, we were a photo reconnaissance squadron. That means we took photos of the important installations in North Korea that needed to be bombed. We would then send our films to Japan, where the B-29s, the four-engine bombers, were based. They would come in and hit the targets, and then we would go back in and film the damage. The motto of our squadron was, first and last over the target, which we were very proud of. I was a mechanic on F-80 Shooting Star jets. I enjoyed my time there. I spent 4 years in the Air Force. I spent my 21st birthday coming back from Korea on the troop ship. Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
My name is Rick Cleaver, and I spent 2 years in Korea. And when I got over there was the parallel, it was the 38th parallel, where all the men from the 25th Infantry Division was there. And we had a lot of trouble with going to the war in the first place, and nobody liked it. Whenever we got home, we had to wear our uniforms. We had no civilian uniforms, so we wore our regular uniforms. And the people actually looked down at us. I had two older brothers that were in the Second World War, and one was in Germany and one was in the Philippines. And to go over to Korea, it took us 27 hours. They flew us all the way over to relieve the division that was up there waiting for us and everything. And when it came time to leave, you're supposed to have 4 points you get for being online, and 3 points for behind the line, and so on, all the way back to 0. And you had to have 36 points. Well, I ended up at almost 55 points because we had no replacements. Let's see. When we left Korea, or when we got to Korea, Seoul, Korea was obliterated. There was nothing standing. And when we went up to the front, let's see, coming back, it was, we took us 27 hours to get there, but it took us 16 days to get home from these troop ships that took us back home. And when they got home, they took pictures of the boat and all the guys that were on the boat. And my oldest brother, he asked me, what's the name of that boat? And I said, the Marine Adder. He says, that's the same boat I came home in the Second World War. And when I got back to the States, it took a while. Excuse me. It took us a while to get back into civilian life, and but all I can say is that we got the greatest country in the world. And if we had to, I would do it again. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
You know, we have 3 flags behind us. Of course, the Stars and Stripes, the American flag, which is being represented today by all of you. The official flag of the state of Ohio. Incidentally, Ohio is the only state in America without a flag. It's actually a banner. It's actually a pennant. And representing the state of Ohio is State Representative John Rogers, who will be here in 1 minute. I'll bring him up. And then, of course, the city flag, represented by me in my official capacity. So, John Rogers and I have been friends for many years. He was the mayor of Mentor-on-the-Lake when I was the mayor of Willowick. And you were mayor for 20 years? You didn't know when to get out either, huh? So he is our state representative now, working in Columbus, representing the 60th district, which is Willowick, Wickliffe, Eastlake, Mentor, part of Mentor, Mentor-on-the-Lake, Fairport Harbor, Grand River, and Painesville. So John Rogers also has some proclamations also. John? Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mr. Rogers. I'd like to welcome you to my neighborhood. For those of you that know that little. Thank you, Mayor Bondi. Thank you, Mrs. McKee, for inviting me today. It's always a pleasure to be able to recognize individuals that have served our country. My father was in the Pacific Theater at the end of the Second World War, and my youngest brother hopefully will have 3 stripes this summer. He's a lieutenant commander, and he's stationed in Europe, and he's assigned to a Special Warfare Operations Unit 2, which is a SEAL team. He's been to Afghanistan twice. So those of us that have individuals in our families that are serving or have served understand how important their service to our country is and how valuable they are to us and our families and to all of you, because without them, we may not enjoy the freedoms that we share today. So on behalf of the Ohio House of Representatives, I would like to commend each of you today and extend special recognition on being honored for your outstanding military service during the Korean War. And there is correct, an armistice has not been signed, and that's why almost 50,000 American soldiers still are on the 38th parallel, if I recall correctly. The DMZ? They're still there. They're still there. And if any of you join the service someday, you may be there as well. Hopefully one day, we'll recognize peace there. Each of you are indeed a remarkable individual. You have combined courage and dedication with tremendous strength and resolve during your loyal service to the United States Armed Forces during the Korean War. Indeed, each of you have demonstrated an unwavering commitment to performing your duties and fulfilling your responsibilities with the utmost efficiency and competence. Through your tremendous efforts, and those like you, you have distinguished yourself as a patriotic and hardworking American. The heroic traditions of our country's armed forces are an important part of our nation's heritage. Giving freely of your time, your energy, and abilities, often far beyond what was required or expected, you have earned the respect and admiration of all of those with whom you have served, and the gratitude of Americans here, today, and everywhere. As you reflect on your military career, you have the satisfaction of knowing that you have provided an invaluable service to our country and have established a record of achievement worthy of emulation. Thus, it is with great pleasure that on behalf of the Speaker of the House, myself, as well as all of the members of the House of Representatives, it is with great pleasure that we commend each of you for your outstanding military service and salute you as one of Ohio's finest citizens. Thank you. Richard Evanmark? Richard Evanmark at the end of the thing? Okay. There you go, sir. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Look at it in a second. Thank you, sir. You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ed Ventura. Ed.
Thank you very much. Ed? Edward. That's you? That's a good thing. Wouldn't have it any other way. So, Anthony, are you related to Dr. Taddeo?
Pardon?
Are you related to Dr. Taddeo?
Yes, he's a relation.
Is he? He's a great guy. I used to work with him in the hospital.
Yeah, I think he retired and now
He did.
he's enjoying
Yes,
himself.
he is.
I'd like to make a reference to the air show at Lost Nation Airport this year is July 19 and 20, and it's going to be the Korean War. We're going to have some other veterans out there from the Korean War and some of the aircraft that flew in the Korean War. And just reference, there are still 8,000 Americans that are still over there, dead or lost, MIAs, 8,000. Thank you.
We're missing anybody?
Okay, you do have some questions. We have to get you back to class to get ready for your finals. Better you than me. And you guys have some questions, so we probably have time for one, maybe two. So we got to have good ones. Who's got a good one? Speak.
When you were fighting, where were you stationed and who was your commander?
I guess you already talked about where you were stationed, but who was your commanding officer? Do you remember? Don't remember?
Yes, I remember.
Other than Truman? What's that? Tom Horner. Don't remember? Yeah. Curtis, oh, I remember that name. I was a history major. No idea? Okay. Don't remember? Okay. Don't remember? Don't remember. Another question. Okay.
What was your most vivid memory of the battle during the day and the night?
What was your most vivid memory? Anyone? What's that?
Shot by moonshiners.
Got shot by moonshiners. You gotta get shot by somebody. It may as well be moonshiners. They could probably have bad aim. So, we're gonna have to get you guys back to class. And again, have a great summer. We'll be seeing you at the parks, I'm sure. And good luck at high school. You're almost ninth graders. So.
Thank you. It's me in 1953. Haven't changed a bit.